The movie starts in Kunar province, Afghanistan. There, Tony Stark is chatting with some soldiers in a Humvee. He is a playboy, philanthropist, and visionary CEO of a leading military defense contractor. After some time, Stark's convoy gets attacked by a group of terrorists called 10 Rings. Tony gets wounded by shrapnel from one of his company's weapons, and terrorists capture him. Then the movie turns 36 hours earlier in Las Vegas. There, we see a glimpse of Tony's successful pass-through presentation. Stark quickly stole the spotlight with his brilliant and unique mind at a young age. When Tony was 21 years old, he lost his parents in a car accident. After Howard Stark died, his friend and business partner, Obadiah Stane, took over as interim CEO. But a few months later, Tony inherited Stark Industries and took over from Obadiah Stane, becoming the youngest CEO of the company. After the presentation ended, James Rhodes was given the honor of presenting the Apogee Award to Stark, but Tony wasn't there, so Stane accepted the award in Stark's honor. After the ceremony, Rhodes brought Stark the award, while Stark was gambling in the casino. When Stark was about to leave the hotel, Christine Everhart, a journalist, approached him for an interview. Everhart questions him on Stark Industries' business practices in weapons manufacturing. Stark deflects her questions, replying that the world would always need weapons to keep the peace. The next morning, Stark's assistant, Pepper Potts, later arrives in the workshop and reminds him about his trip to Afghanistan. Stark then left his mansion and drove to the Stark Industries aviation division. He boards the plane and sits down along with Rhodes. After landing in Afghanistan, he gets greeted by military members before he presents Stark Industries' Jericho missile. Giving a speech, Stark explains that the missile is so powerful that it would only be needed to be fired once to defeat the enemy. Stark had a drink after the successful presentation. After this, Stark got into a convoy vehicle to leave. As Stark's convoy drives through the desert to return to the base, they are suddenly attacked by insurgents, and Stark get injured in this encounter. Now, the movie turns towards the present time, where an operation is being performed on Stark's chest to remove the pieces of shrapnel. He wakes up sometime later and finds an electromagnet attached to his chest, hooked up to a car battery. His fellow captive Yinsen explains that the electromagnet keeps the shrapnel from entering his heart and killing him. When they were talking, someone bangs on the door. As Yinsen orders Stark to get onto his feet, they get greeted by Abu Bakr. Bakr explains that he wants Stark to rebuild the Jericho missile, but Stark refuses to help them. As a result, they start torturing him. 10 Rings then take Stark outside the cave, where Bakr shows him how the 10 Rings have an incredible supply of his Stark Industries weapons, including guns and missiles. Bakr tells him that, if Tony built the Jericho missile for them, they would give him his freedom. So, Stark agrees to do the job, but he knows that Bakr will never free him. That night, watching Stark heartbroken, Yinsen tries to comfort him and tells him that what he has seen out there is the legacy of Tony Stark. He tells him to do something and make things right. After understanding his current situation, Tony starts the work. While pretending to work on the missile, Stark and Yinsen secretly build a powerful electric generator called an arc reactor to power Stark's electromagnet. Stark tells Yinsen his plan to escape by building an armored suit. They then start to work on the suit. One day their work gets interrupted by Raza, the leader of this 10 Rings. Believing they were lying to him, Raza threatens to put red-hot coal in Yinsen's mouth until Stark tells him to stop. When they were powering up the suit, the 10 Rings discover Stark's plan and ambush the workshop. Yinsen sacrifices himself to stall the terrorists and buy time for the suit to power up. Stark fights his way out of the cave using the armored suit, killing any terrorist he comes across by striking them with his armor. He comes across the dying Yinsen, who tells Tony not to waste his life before passing on. Enraged, Stark leaves the cave, burns the terrorist stockpile of Stark Industries produced weapons, and flies away using jets in his suit. Then Stark crashes in the desert, which destroys the suit. After which, he is found by Lieutenant Colonel James Rhodes, his friend and military liaison. Returning to America, Tony is reunited with his assistant Pepper Potts and Obadiah Stane. He calls a press conference to announce that his company will no longer manufacture weapons, having seen the strife they cause in the wrong hands. Stane jumps in, moves Stark away from the podium, and attempts to convince the audience that nothing is to be concerned about. After that, Stark has a meeting with Stane beside the giant arc reactor. Stane advises him to reconsider the decision as he fears it will ruin the company. Stark insists that they should take another look at the arc reactor technology, based on his work with Huygensen, proving his theory by showing Stane the arc reactor in his chest. Back inside his Malibu mansion, Stark calls upon the help of Potts to get rid of the expired arc reactor in his chest. Pepper helps switch out the two reactors and keeps the original, now with the words "Proof Tony Stark" has a heart engraved on it. Tony also builds an upgraded and sleeker version of his suit, the Mark II. This suit is capable of fully controlled flight using miniature repulsors. While taking the suit on its first test flight, Tony attempts to break the world altitude record set by the SR-71, but the suit freezes up in the upper atmosphere and starts falling to the ground, nearly killing him. After returning to his home, Tony changes the suit's base material to a gold titanium alloy to prevent further icing issues. As he does so, he notices a news program covering an annual charity event held by his company, and after learning that he was not sent an invitation, decides to go along anyway. Arriving at the party, he goes to get a drink when he is confronted by Christine Everhart, who reveals that Stark Enterprises has been selling weapons to the Ten Rings since Tony's return. Tony questions Obadiah about this. Seeing no other alternative, Stane reveals to Stark that he is the one who has cut him from the company. When Tony returns home, he sees a news program covering slaughters being carried out by the Ten Rings in Yinsen's homeland. In his fury, Tony dons the new completed suit and flies to Afghanistan. Upon arriving there, he wipes out a group of 10 Rings who were in the middle of attacking a village and destroys their weapons in the area. This battle gains the attention of Rhodes and the US military, so Rhodes orders the two F-22 Raptors to shoot down the unknown target. In an attempt to evade the jets, Tony accidentally destroys one and saves the pilot when his parachute malfunctions before escaping from the area. Meanwhile, the 10 Rings gathered the pieces of Stark's prototype suit from the desert. Obadiah travels to Afghanistan to meet with Raza. Raza gives the suit's remains to Obadiah, hoping that Obadiah will manufacture suits for the 10 Rings, but Stane betrays the 10 Rings. He paralyzes Raza using a sonic taser. Stane then orders his men to kill Raza and the rest of the 10 Rings members because they failed to assassinate Stark as he wanted. On his way back to Stark Industries, Stane orders his scientists to have a new suit reverse engineered from the wreckage. Back at home, after explaining things to Pepper, Tony asks her to hack into the Stark Industries database to investigate the arms trafficking being carried out by his company. She travels to Obadiah's office and discovers his dirty dealings. Potts finds evidence of Stane supplying weapons to the terrorists, but also discovers that Stane had initially hired the 10 Rings to kill Stark in Afghanistan, while narrowly avoiding getting caught out by Obadiah, and passes the information on to Coulson and his organization. When Stane goes to scientists, they reveal that they cannot finish his suit because they cannot duplicate Stark's arc reactor. Enraged, he goes to Stark's home and paralyzes him using a sonic taser and steals the miniature arc reactor from his chest. He then leaves Tony to die. Stark manages to crawl to his lab and saves himself by reusing his original arc reactor. On the other side, Stane puts the arc reactor into his suit and powers it up. Pepper, Coulson, and the agents try to arrest Obadiah, but he gets into his suit, attacks them, and nearly kills Pepper. Stark flies straight to the Stark Industries headquarters, where he discovers Obadiah Stane is about to execute Pepper, so he attacks him and knocks Stane aside. The two of them battle, but Stark is outmatched without his upgraded reactor to run his suit at full capacity. After that, Stark flies up into the sky, with Obadiah following him and managing to grab him when his suit freezes up and shuts down, and he starts falling down. Both of them land on the roof of Stark Industries headquarters. Tony finds himself out of options, so he instructs Potts to overload the large arc reactor there. Doing so unleashes a massive electrical surge that knocks Stane unconscious, causing him and his armor to fall into the exploding reactor, killing him. The next morning, Tony holds a press conference to explain last night's things. Agent Coulson gives him a cover story to explain the events of the night and Stane's death. Stark begins giving the cover story at the press conference, but then instead announces that "I am Iron Man." In the post-credit scene, S.H.I.E.L.D. director Nick Fury visits Stark at his home, stating that Iron Man is not the only superhero in the world, and he's just become part of a bigger universe. The movie ends here with this scene.